Hello everybody and welcome to the Football Philosophy channel, and it's the Europa League semi-final first leg tonight against Roma at Old Trafford. The team news is out, and anybody that saw me show yesterday, I felt it was pretty obvious what the team was going to be, and for a change, I don't know why, because usually it's quite difficult to get the team bang on, but I really fancied it was obvious today. So it's De Gea in goal, Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Lindelof and Shaw. I did have a couple of newspaper predictions written down. The Manchester Evening News predicted Bailey was going to be in the lineup, which astonished me. I don't know what made them think that, but goodness me, that's me alarm going off, me reminder. And it's McTominay and Fred. Look, I always knew he was going to go with McTominay and Fred. Lots of people saying he thinks they might play Pogba. It's an important game. It's a serious game. As I said on my show yesterday, Roma are equally as good as many of the recognised big six, if you like. Look, Chelsea have come on a treat under Tuchel, but as Chelsea were 3 months ago, Roma wouldn't be far behind them. As Arsenal have been all season, as Spurs have been most of the season, Roma wouldn't be far behind them. Plus, it's a semi-final of the Europa League, and for all those sorts, the reason I'm mentioning those teams, for all those sorts of teams, it's always McTominay and Fred. So why people thought, don't get me wrong here, by the way, it's not what I'd pick. When you're predicting the lineup, you're predicting what you think the manager will guess. It's or pick, I should say. So it's not what I'd select. I actually guessed what the manager would select, and to me, it was fairly obvious. So it is McTominay and Fred. It's obviously Bruno at 10, and then a front three. You've got to say Pogba as a part of the front three. The formation that we play now, when he tucks out left, of course he is more of a midfield player, but at the end of the day, the way we sort of set our lineup out, which would normally be something like, say, Greenwood, Cavani and Martial if he was fit, or Rashford, Cavani and Martial, or if Dan James plays, we always call it a front three. So, why change that if Pogba is part of it? So Pogba is part of the front three, and the front three are Rashford, I assume will start on the right, with Cavani at 9, because Pogba's more effective on the left, and in my opinion more effective than Rashford as well. So it's very interesting. Well, it will be interesting to see, but I'm pretty certain it's right. I do think Pogba will start on the left. I've not looked at the Roma team, but a friend of mine sent me a WhatsApp saying that Mkhitaryan and Smalling both start for Roma, by the way, so that'll be nice to see those two lads back at Old Trafford. Anybody on with any questions yet?
Yeah, Maximilian Lang has put, would you rather want to see Matic in for either of our CDMs or James in for Rashford?
If I only had to choose one or the other. Wow, it's a great question. It's a great question. I'd probably see if Marcus is going to play on the right, which I think he will. I would sooner have Dan James as a right winger. I prefer a winger. I don't make any apology for this. I prefer someone who's going to at least try and get round the back and fire crosses across. Which maybe Marcus should do that more often, playing on the right. He's not going to be happy cutting in to shoot with his left like he does from the other side. But it's a right tough question. I would probably go with Matic. I'd like us to build up better, pass it better. I believe Matic is our best passer of the 3 CDMs, as we call them these days. So I would probably go with McTominay and Matic. That's what I'd probably do if I could only choose one or the other.
Bun to Zoot says, what do you think of Van der Beek, Rick?
I think he's fantastic. I really do think he's a fantastic player. I was chatting to somebody yesterday and we were talking about players who have got the wherewithal to, I call it remembering where your teammates are. Sometimes you see players get the ball and they turn to give it one way, but then they tend to forget what is now their blind side. And Van der Beek's got that. He's got that radar about him where he can turn to face the ball, but not forget the picture that's behind him, and he can receive it. And I've seen him do this numerous times. He turns and passes it into space, but passes it as he's turning. He doesn't look again. He just remembers which. Obviously, if that player's not in space when he last saw him, if there's a defender too close to him, it'd be too risky. But if somebody's in a little bit of space, you know, and it's only a second or two this, but some players, once they turn and look that way, they tend to forget what's there. Van der Beek's got that knack of remembering that there's a player there in space. He can turn, receive it, and knock it that way without even looking again.
I remember years ago.
And I think he's brilliant.
There was a documentary years ago about David Platt where they used to talk about his photographic memory.
Right.
How he used to take photos as he scanned the pitch and he'd remember where people were and not have to look again for a second time. And he's got that same type of understanding, hasn't he?
I believe so, yeah. He looks a fantastic player. I'd love him to see him get more game time.
Sean D. Rick, do you think Rashford is believing the hype put around about him? Because even if his ability is nowhere close to what they say.
Does he believe the hype about him? I don't know. I don't know the lad personally. He seems, look, a lot of people know that he's not my favourite player. You know, anybody who's watched me regularly knows that I think he's vastly overrated. But I would never have a go at his character or anything like that. I would never say that. So, you know, I don't know the lad. I've never met the lad. He seems, you know, look, let's be honest, he seems an absolute diamond geezer, but that doesn't wash with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're here to play football.
I'm here to play football, yeah, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, yeah, so,
I was having this conversation with somebody today about how unfortunate it is for this top. It's about our management really and the state of the club from top to bottom. But when you look at what Pep's done with the likes of Sterling, where Sterling wasn't the best decision maker when he was playing at Liverpool, and he's come there. His decision making is exceptional now. It's like the rest of the City team. It's just been drilled into him. We don't do that here, son. We don't do that here. We don't do that. This is what we do. It's just. You can just picture it getting stopped constantly at training for the first 6 months he was under Pep's guidance.
I can imagine
and it's been drilled into him. And you can see that in Foden. He just knows he's
releases
on the ball
quickly
at the right time. Doesn't force it when it's not on. Knows to come back and...
times, I mean, I hate banging on about City, but I watched him the other night. The number of times Foden looks as though he's going to take the full-back on. And United fans go mad about our players doing this. Looks like he's going to take somebody on, and he doesn't. He just checks back and just passes it.
Yes.
Then they build it round, and maybe they wait for an opportune moment to get in behind.
Yes.
And it's for them. It's got to be almost certain that you are going to get in behind before you pass it. We try and do it when it's really, really risky. Far too often.
Yes.
Far too often.
Yeah. I think a lot of the time, I think people misunderstand that when it comes to decision making, and you want your players to be able to recognise when there's an opportunity to play that ball, but it's equally as important to understand when it isn't on. You might work a position where you think, right, this is a position now where we can make a chance, and it's equally as important that a player recognises that although this is a position where I might be expected to play that killer ball, that it's not that likely I'm going to pull it off. And then having that now to recycle it and come away from it and turn it down.
Yeah, it could go out to the other side of the field and come back to you.
Yes.
It could still be you that ends up being the person who puts the ball in the box.
Turning down that opportunity is equally as important as recognising when it's on.
Correct.
It's a little bit like in poker when they say, a good fold is as good as a good bet. Do you know what I mean? You know if the odds aren't in your favour. John Joe Kerwin, good evening, Ricky.
Good evening, John Joe.
If you could combine two players' attributes into one super player, who would they be? Rick's work rate and shape with Billy Duck's heading and finishing would be class.
It would have been class, yeah. It would have been class.
Mikel Rizzo. Ricky, have you seen much of Roma this season? If so, what have you liked about them?
I haven't seen a lot of them, but I've seen a couple of games. Obviously with Smalling being there, but he's been injured for a long time. I think he had I'm sure already had an injury to his elbow at one point, which seems a bit of an unusual injury.
More recently, he's had an hamstring issue.
He's had an hamstring, but he's been out for quite a lot recently. And when he was playing, I was watching him a bit more often, and I wasn't over impressed with him. I've got to be honest. I wasn't over impressed with him when I was watching him, and they weren't doing too bad at one point, but they've slipped. The results have slipped dramatically. I think the 7th or 8th now, where they were probably 2 months ago, they were looking like they had a decent chance of Champions League football, but they've got no chance now.
At the risk of talking about stats, which we know the biggest advocate of, Mkhitaryan's high up on the assist stats in Italy, isn't he, apparently?
Is he?
Yeah, I think so.
He
was.
He usually is.
Josh Harper says, don't know about you, Rick, but I'm struggling to get motivated for games after the Super League fiasco. I want a reset in football with salary caps and transfer limits. Otherwise, it's all about money.
I like the idea of salary caps in a big way. I really do. The money in football now that's coming out of the clubs and going to agents especially. But then obviously that the agents are trying to get the salaries of the players as high as they can if they're on a percentage. A salary. Look, I've never been in such a situation that these footballers are in. But the amount of money that they're earning, did he need that much money? Do you know what I mean? I don't get it. 200,000, 300,000 pound a week. It's a big wage per year. There's not many people on what they get in a week. There's not many people on it per year. You know what I mean? It's just an unbelievable amount of money. Unbelievable. And I would like to see it. I saw an article about Ancelotti talking about salary caps. He thinks it's a good idea.
Right.
And I definitely think it is. I asked somebody about how it works in the States. I think it was Adam Farmy I was speaking to. Or was it Adam? It might have been my friend Ian. And Ian said to me he thinks it works like they have a set amount of salary that they're allowed to pay out. It's not a salary cap per player, but if you've got, I don't know, let's say you've got £2 million a week, which is an unbelievable amount of money, but that's probably what we're giving out per week when we've got players on 200 grand and 300 grand. But the way it works, you can still pay your player what you want, but it just means that once you've paid so many players a couple of £100 a week, you've only got a set amount left that you can give to the other players. So you've got to try and balance it up better. And it'd take a lot more skill, I think, as well from the manager to get enough good players in who were prepared to work for the paltry sum of 100 grand a week. Do you know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it, definitely.
Yeah. The way that, obviously, you've just mentioned their agents working hard to try and get as much money as they can for their players, and that's the world we live in. But it is contrary to kind of an overall team ethic, isn't it? You know what I mean? It got that whole mentality about more for me and more for me.
I know where you're coming from.
Do you know what I mean?
It doesn't sit well, does it?
No, it doesn't. You want the team to be successful and everyone within that team
and everybody to be happy.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, how can you be happy if you play a similar position? So let's say your two centre backs. If one of them's on, I don't know, if they've come through the ranks, they could be on 25 grand a week. You know what I mean? I'm saying 25 grand a week as if I'm talking about 700 quid a week or something. I mean, they could be on 25 grand a week, but playing next to a centre back who's on 150 grand a week.
Yeah.
And it's not right. I don't think it's right.
Yeah.
Well, what's next?
King Yusuf, would you try and fit Pogba if the front three was Marshall, Cavani and James and the pivot was McTominay and Matic?
Would I try and fit Pogba in as a 10, so to speak?
Yeah. I like the sound of the rest of that, by the way.
Yeah, I do. I like the sound of the rest of that, yeah.
That's King Yusuf who's asked that.
Yeah, Yusuf, I'd like to see that line-up, as he's just said. And I wouldn't mind Pogba having a go there, but obviously you've not got Bruno in that line-up, and trying to work out a team without Bruno in it. It's all, and same goes for Rashford as well. It's all right us sitting here saying I'd like to see this and I'd like to see that. Even when I say what I'd like to see, I often include Bruno and Rashford just because I know there's no chance whatsoever of them getting dropped out of the team, so to speak. So you've got to try and be a little bit serious about it. I'd love to see that lineup that you just said, except with Van der Beek playing at number 10. I'd love to see Van der Beek playing at number 10. And I wouldn't mind seeing Pogba there. And I don't think Bruno's got any better credentials than either of them.
You see, it is slightly different when you name that team and you've got Pogba in one line. Well, you wouldn't have Pogba in that position. It'd be Marshall to the left in that. Yeah. But Marshall does do his defensive work more diligently than Rashford and Greenwood do. Yeah. James obviously does. Yeah. So when you name Van der Beek at 10 in a team that's got wide players who both do the defensive work diligently, it's more like he is actually a number 10.
Yes.
When you name him in that position and it's Rashford and Greenwood,
he's got to be more diligent defensively.
Yes, correct. He's a midfield player.
It's a balance of the players being too, if Rashford and Greenwood are caught too far forward,
Yes.
which is more likely to happen than it is with James and Martial, then Van der Beek can't afford.
He's got to be back in.
And what happens with us? Bruno gets caught too far forward playing at 10, doesn't he?
Of course he does.
With Greenwood, let's be honest though, the results don't seem to catch us out too often. The results don't go too badly, do they?
Yeah.
Obviously, we'd like to be challenging City, but at the same time, I don't think we expected to be second at this stage of the year either, did we?
No.
It's a fine balancing act.
I mean, it's unlikely that. I think it looks like Cavani's going to be off, doesn't it, at the end of the season?
That's how it's looking. That's how it's looking.
Because we're probably not going to get to see Cavani and Martial in the same teams at all now, are we?
No, I'd like to see. I know you're leading to here. Martial playing as a 10.
I'd love to have seen that.
You wouldn't have seen it anyway. Even
No,
if he
because
stayed,
it's the wrong shape that we play.
And it's Bruno's position, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a terrible shame because I think this with Cavani is he's a top footballer, Cavani.
Yeah.
But something that goes against him and it kind of misleads people is because he's quite tall and people mistake him for like a target man.
Yeah.
I see Cavani more like a player that wants to play on the shoulder that just happens to be tall.
Yes.
Like if he was a Michael Owen, he wants to play next to a Heskey. He wants to play with someone who's comfortable with his back to goal.
Like me with Billy Ducks.
Like you with Billy Ducks, correct? Or like Cavani would be Cole and Martial would be York.
Yeah.
Cavani wants to be in and around the box. He's decent when he drops deep, but he's not Martial when he drops deep.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And Martial isn't Cavani in the box. It'd be a beautiful pairing.
I think it would. Like a proper 4-4-2 with Martial at 10 and Cavani at 9.
Pogba on the left, James on the right, McTominay and Matic in the middle of the park.
It'd be wonderful.
I think it would be. Someone just put something there. Sapphire has put, Ricky was talking to a fan who started going in the 70s and he said that in their primes, Law and Charlton were earning about 200 quid a week, only 4 times what he was earning as a lorry driver.
Yes, the footballers, when I was a young man, it went up pretty quickly to about 10 times, I think, probably in the early 70s. It went up to about 10 times the average working man's wage. When you think about 10 times the average working man's wage, it's still a lot of money. But the money that they earn today is just unbelievable figures. I mean, I don't know what is the average working man's now? I would like to guess it's 700 or 800 quid a week, perhaps. So if you was on that, what would you be on? 7 or 8 grand a week. If you was on 10 times it. 10 times the average working man's, it's a lot of money. 7 or 8 grand a week, and they're on 100 grand and 150 grand and all that.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Roger Salik says, greetings from Serbia, Rick.
Hi, mate.
Which of our players do you think would be able to play in a current CL semi-finalist teams?
Ooh.
That's a tough one.
That is a tough one. Luke Shaw.
Straight away.
Won't let anybody down. If he was fit, Anthony Martial won't let anybody down.
Our sub-goalie.
Yeah. Look, the funny thing is about football is when you've got... Let's try and use like the marks out of 10 system like we use when we're doing player ratings. Let's just say everybody at United on average is a 7 out of 10. And let's say that's on average. But then everybody at City on average is an 8 out of 10. And because it's that close, by the way, when we play them, we've only got to whoop it a little bit and we can manage to beat them. But we can't keep that standard up all the time. And that's why we don't get to Champions League semi-finals like they do. It's why we're not winning the league like they do, because they slip up less often against teams that we slip up against. So they're more consistent than us. But we're not really that far behind them. We're really not. If we were, we wouldn't be able to beat them so often. We beat them pretty often, 3 times out of 4 in the last 4 league games. I think the other one was a draw. It was 3 times out of 4 in the last 4 league games, plus a draw. We wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, what other clubs, I don't know if there is anybody, but what other clubs have got a record like that against City? We up it a little bit when we play City, and we manage to beat them. So we only have to up it a little bit, and we do it. So we need to up it to that level regular. So when you're asking about each individual player, if you just took any one player out of our team, look, there's 1 or 2 who've got no chance. I won't even name names. You probably know who I'm thinking now. There's 1 or 2 if you put them in their team that I think they'd sing dramatically. 1 or 2. But there's probably 7 or 8 players in our team. If you just took that one individual, and put him into City's team, you might not see the difference. There's probably 7 or 8. If you took 4, 5 or 6 of those individuals, it'd sink a little bit.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You can carry one player, but when I say carry, don't forget we're not that far behind them, and it is an average. If we're averaging 7 out of 10 every week, all our players, and they're averaging 8 out of 10 every week, all their players, it's an average. So probably 2 or 3 of our players are actually at that level.
Yes.
It's picking out which players they are that's the difficult bit.
Yeah. The positions may not actually align to make this happen, but there may be some of our players that are getting 9s while they've got players who are getting 7s, so they may improve if the positions align.
And they could improve by playing with better players.
Yes.
Could improve by playing with better players as well. So there's probably quite a few who would be fine, but you couldn't shift too many, or else it'd sink a little bit.
Michael Rizzo says Ricky was definitely the greatest number 9 to ever grace English football.
Thank you, Michael.
McSaw says, "Hi Rick, what do you think about Mkhitaryan today? And did you rate him when he played for us?"
He was a bit of a frustrating sort of player, Mkhitaryan. Again, you could see the ability that he had, and he had that little thing we were just talking about remembering where, had that bit of a radar, remembering situations when he got the ball and knowing which way to turn. Sometimes he's as clever as he was, his actual, he's trying to do it. His execution of it wasn't always. It's sometimes a bit frustrating. It just let him down a bit too often for me. So a chance of being a really top player, Mkhitaryan, but just not quite there with the execution often enough. Yeah. Even though he definitely got the right idea.
It's funny, isn't it, how luck's involved in football at all levels, obviously, but even at this level, where it can just so happen that you sign for a team when they're in need of a player that plays that position, and then you might get a goal in your first couple of appearances, and then they persevere with you, and you get more games. You just get that run of games in that team without getting dislodged. Yeah. Obviously, Bruno. I feel like Bruno's benefited from that. There was an outcry for a player to do those types of things. He's come in with persevering. He's got a good run of games. The goals have gone his way. Completely the opposite is to be said of Van der Beek. Just completely unfortunate, the timing of him arriving at our club and what's going on there. And I think Mkhitaryan maybe suffered a bit of that fate as well. I don't really think he got a good enough run of games in his favourite position.
Agreed. Yeah.
Much like Kagawa, actually. It's funny that they all play that similar position at 10.
Players, we don't seem to appreciate them.
No, it's like we only want one of them if he's scoring goals, which is why we've persevered with Bruno. But the ones who are intelligent, like Van der Beek, Mkhitaryan, Kagawa
was a great player,
matter to an extent. We don't seem to appreciate that intelligence and guile.
Weird.
It is strange. Yeah, it is strange.
Van der Beek, did you mention him? Same thing.
Yeah, Van der Beek, correct, yeah.
Anything from DJ Soul, man, don't let it go past.
I'll try and not.
He'll go mad.
I'll try and not.
I hope you're watching, Paul. I've told him.
Yes, I'll keep my eyes peeled. Rick the Red USA, Rick, do United regret not getting Pochettino now?
Do they regret not getting him? Well, I know a lot of the fans do. I know plenty of fans are still all the way out, and a lot of fans would love us to get Pochettino. But when you say do United, you may be talking about the club. I think the club are more than happy with Ollie, don't you? I think they're more than happy with him.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It seems that way. Dino Brennan, evening Rick.
Evening Dino.
My young lad has just started playing on the wing and has been scouted a few times. Number one tip to be a good winger.
The number one tip that I could give him is similar that I could give to no matter what position you play. As a winger, it's obviously brilliant if you can beat your fullback and you can get crosses into the box. I don't know if you can answer this, whether he can put it up quick. How old is the lad? Or is it on there?
No, he's not put it on.
But to catch the eye of somebody who understands the game properly, he's got to take a good first touch, and he's got to give a simple ball if it's on. If he can beat his fullback and get crosses in, that's great. But there's certain things, I'll give you 2 or 3 tips. There's certain things that you can do that are not necessarily about ability. They're about mindset. First of all, if there's an attack down the far side, you can do this easily. If there's an attack down the far side with the left back or the left winger, make sure you get in the box at the far post. Make sure you get in the box at the far post. That's dead easy to do. So then there's definitely you're an extra body in the box when it's going to come over from the other side. That's one thing that you can do, and it's just about effort and remembering I've got to be in there. Even United, I've got a couple of wingers or people who play on the wing who don't make a determined effort to get to that far post. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So get to that far post when the ball's being developed down the other wing. And then obviously, tracking the fullback. Don't get caught out not tracking your fullback and letting that fullback double up on your fullback. So there's two things with work rate and effort. So first touch, pass it simply. These are the things that you can do. And then obviously track your fullback, get in at the far post. Do all them things right, and if you can occasionally beat your man and get the ball over, that'd be brilliant. But that's the most difficult thing. The other things are all easy.
Yes, but you can
do the easy things right.
Yes, if you can get them right, the rest of it's icing on the cake.
Yeah.
All of that's kind of like reading of the game, innit? And we've got, when the player's developing down that other flank, being able to read what the likelihood, what are your teammates trying to do here? What are you trying to accomplish? They're going to try and get the ball over into the box here. Yeah. So I need to read that is what's likely to happen if they succeed, and I need to be there to take part in the next phase if that happens.
Yes.
And so much of that understanding of the game and that reading of the game is missing even at the top level of football.
I 100% agree. Yeah. What you just said about reading the game, you just described exactly what I was talking about. But a lot of people, when they talk about reading the game, they think that you mean reading what the opposition are going to do. This isn't the opposition.
No.
If you're on the right wing and your left back's got it on the other side of the field, there's no point just running offside. There's no point just running in when you're not. You need to be able to see, right, he's going to give it our left winger now. If I can time this right, I can get in there after the left winger's in time to cross it. Because if you can't time your run, so when he's about to cross it, if you can be running in, you've got momentum, you've got more chance, you can cover more ground. If you can picture what I mean is, if the left back drills the ball across the box, if you're just standing there and it travels 3 or 4 yards in front of you, you've got to start off. And so if you can time your run so that you're running into the box at the moment that you think he's going to cross it, you're then already running.
Yes.
So then as he fires it across, you've got momentum.
Yes, but you want to be kind of slowing up as you're coming in the run, so you're leaving that gap.
If you can just be jogging. If you can just be jogging in, and as soon as he fires it, bump you in.
You can be at so many depths then, can't you?
Correct. You can judge it. Yeah, because you're already running slowly, because you don't know what line the ball's going to take, it might cut back a little bit, it might go straight, you might even be angled a little bit towards the goal. But if you're running already, you can either slow down a little bit or speed up a little bit, or
put a real burst on and get right to the back, right to the dead ball line.
When you realise which way it's going.
Yeah.
So if you can time it that you're running in as he crosses it, it'd be brilliant.
Yeah. Like I say, that reading of the game is something that so many people, like you say, think it's about reading the opposition and it isn't. It's all parts of the game is understanding what is going on around you, what's likely to happen next, and reacting and making sure that you're in position to be a part of that in the best way possible. John Joe Kerwin, hi assistant. Could you ask Ricky to name his rating scale, the Richter scale? It fits perfectly.
The Richter scale, okay, done. The Richter scale, I'll write it down now. The Richter scale.
Red Devil 20, Rick. Be interesting to see Smalling tonight for them. Would you still rather him over our defenders?
Well, he's been injured a lot this season, hasn't he? I remember the Chris Smalling, the way I rated him when he played. I'd have him any day of the week. I loved him as I thought dead solid Chris Smalling. Obviously, people have a go about his distribution, and I see people on Twitter put the odd clip up where he sent one into the stand. Look, I'm not saying he's any better now or any worse. Harry Maguire's doing fine, Lindelof's doing fine. But every week I can put a clip up of Harry Maguire sending a long ball into the stand. Every week. You know what I mean? And then people go, oh, Chris Smalling's passing was terrible. And they more or less put the same clip up every time, by the way, every kick he went into the stands. You know what I mean? So it's a load of rubbish all that. Forget that about his distribution being bad. It's just like most centre backs, his distribution is reasonable. I'm not saying he's Franz Beckenbauer or Virgil van Dijk. Virgil van Dijk, I've seen some of the passes he puts over for Liverpool when he was playing. Lands them on a sixpence, don't you, for Salah or Ronaldo or Mane, you know, he's different class. So I'm not saying he's Virgil van Dijk or Franz Beckenbauer from my day, but his distribution is perfectly fine. Perfectly fine.
Yeah. Or Ronnie Johnson.
Yeah, go on.
Suyash Shetty says, evening Ricky.
Evening Suyash.
You saw Mbappe didn't have a shot yesterday, even though he is direct, he isn't selfish.
Yeah, yes, good shout. Yeah, it doesn't. I thought, particularly in the first half, that game last night was unbelievable. I can't think of another game. I'm sure somebody could remember one where one team has been so dominant in one half, and for it to revert exactly the opposite way round in the second half. But in the first half, particularly, Mbappe and Neymar, they really looked the part. Short passing, you know, head up, running with the ball, but head up, and then feeding one another and trying to get the second ball off him. He looks a proper player to me.
McSaucer, but Rick, personally, I think Matic and Van der Beek in the pivot would be miles better than McFred. Would love to hear your opinions on this.
I think it'd be better. I mean, this isn't going to happen because of Bruno playing at 10, but I'd love to see Van der Beek at 10 and McTominay and Matic behind him.
Yeah, just to get that balance right.
But I certainly think Van der Beek and Matic, it certainly won't be any less effective than McTominay and Fred.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. JD, Rick, did you rate Pep as a player?
And on that, look, I used to see Barcelona games, but you have to concentrate more, don't you?
Yeah, without going back and watching it again, it's difficult to say.
Yeah, I couldn't really answer the question. All I could say is I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Obviously, I saw Barcelona games, but Pep wasn't the name that everybody said, watch this player, like they did with, you know, more recently with Barcelona players like Xavi and Iniesta and Lionel Messi. And obviously, he's not going to be at Lionel Messi's level. But he wasn't a player that everybody said, you've got to watch this man, you watch him play.
So you never went out of your way to watch him?
So I never went out of my way to concentrate on Pep Guardiola, but look, he played a hell of a lot of games for Barcelona. He's got to be a decent player, obviously, but I couldn't say how highly I rated him through not concentrating on him. I was about to say often enough without concentrating on him ever. You know what I mean? I'd have to bring up an old game or two and then watch closely.
If he plays anything like how he gets...
Even when I'm watching United, I have to watch the game again to see sometimes how well I think somebody played. So players playing for other teams, you know, especially other teams abroad, in England, I'm forever watching different matches on the TV. I'm not forever putting Barcelona games on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Funny how that happens. Sometimes you go through spells, don't you, where you get into a certain league and you watch quite a few Spanish games, you might watch quite a few Italian games.
Well, I'm watching Inter Milan at the minute. They've got so many ex-United players. I like watching ex-United players. It looks like they're going to win. Well, they are, I think, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're nailed on, aren't they?
With 4 of our players in the team.
4 of our players playing.
We kept him. Yeah, well, if Pep...
Matteo Darmian scored the only goal of the game in both of the last 2 home games.
Yeah.
Both of the last 2 home games. Matteo Darmian, not Lukaku.
I know. Astonishing, isn't it?
Astonishing, yeah. Go on.
All I was going to say there, if Pep played the game anything like how he gets his players to play the game,
he
must have been
fantastic.
some player.
He would have been fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
I hope I haven't upset anybody there about Pep Guardiola. I feel a little bit like Ollie. Because Ollie's just said, you know, I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff about, like, he said that he hasn't watched Roma and they're kicking off, and there's loads of posters up in Rome, and all that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I hope I've not upset anybody, but obviously I saw Barcelona play, but I didn't concentrate on individual players. Yeah.
For me, they've kind of took that the wrong way, rather than taking it as as Ollie disrespecting them. They should have took it as, who the fuck this amateur? He's not, you know what I mean? He's not watched us.
Yeah.
Sort your head out.
Yeah.
Rick, Red Devil 20. Rick, what did you get Matter for his birthday yesterday?
I sent him a signed shirt.
Rick, This was Arjun Singh. Rick, thoughts on Van Nistelrooy? I never saw him live, but looked a quality player.
Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, Van Nistelrooy. When he signed, I was devastated that Dwight York was on his way out. What I would have given to have seen those two as a partnership. York and Cole was brilliant, and they had that, like York dropping off a little bit and then arriving late in the box or bang on time, as I like to call it. York had all that about his game, and Andy Cole was a great spearhead. But Van Nistelrooy, to me, was even he was obviously better than Andy Cole. He was that good, as good as Andy Cole was. No disrespect to Andy Cole, but Van Nistelrooy was unbelievable. And when we signed him, I thought, and Fergie was already falling out with Dwight York, and to me it wasn't to do with performances. I don't know what had gone on, but he appeared to be falling out with Dwight York, and every time I saw Dwight York play, he was fantastic. Even with the season we let him go, he was fantastic.
Yeah. Antics off the field, knocking around with Jordan and stuff like that in the papers.
What would I have given to seeing York and Van Nistelrooy for a couple of seasons? It'd have been unbelievable. Would have been unbelievable.
DJ Solomon.
Here we go. Last one then, because it's getting late. You're just in, Paul. Well done.
John Joe Kerwin. Rick, who would you have as the number one in goal?
Who would I have as the number one? I'll probably just about go with De Gea, I think. I thought you just said DJ Solomon.
It was DJ Solomon who's asked that question.
All right.
I'm wondering whether he's thinking that you might say Paul. Paul would have been in the sticks. Let's have a look here.
Better make it the last one. It's 25-2.
Yes. Happy Coding just put, hey Rick, my mate's son just signed for PSV and he's being trained by Rude.
Right.
Got to have half a chance there, haven't they?
Yeah, tell him to tell his son to tell Rude about Rick the Red UK and what he thinks about it. No, in fact, say, get his son, if he's training him, you can ask him.
Go on.
Get his son to say, Dwight York was still at United when you signed. Would you have liked to play a bit more often with him?
Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Say, say my dad's mate said it would have been a fantastic pairing, you and Dwight.
Yeah. So many players that we've had at United where you've missed out. Berbatov.
What a footballer.
Do you know what I mean? So we're not seeing Berbatov getting enough games. We're not going to have seen the best of Cavani because of the what we said before.
What he plays with,
the way that goes. You're not going to get to. You've missed out on it.
Imagine Cavani with a Dwight York or a Teddy Sheringham, intelligent, dropping off, passing it, getting in the box.
We've had that in our ranks. We could have had Marshall and Cavani playing in a 4-4-2.
Marshall would be brilliant in that role.
Absolutely fantastic he'd be.
We better knock it on the head of my fade, unless there's an absolute belter stood there now, ready to go.
No, there's not. Thanks everybody.
Thank you everyone. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. It's been good. Looking forward to this now. It's not going to be easy. I think it's going to be a right game. So there you go. If you've enjoyed that show, please tell all your friends. Please subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, don't tell anybody. Keep stum.